The talking, nagging, lucha watching, puro viewing, indie supporting, drinking, cursing, son of a gun of a podcast. Join former pro wrestler and promoter Dave Dynasty and co-host Ike Isaacs as they talk wrestling and interview those within the business, bringing positivity back to pro wrestling. This is the Dave Dynasty Show.
Greetings and welcome to the Dave Dynasty Show. I am your host, Dave Dynasty. Thank you for joining us for another fun-filled free episode brought to you on behalf of real pro wrestling everywhere. That's what we do here. We support, we endorse, we get into, we explore the world of real pro wrestling. Nothing bad, nothing fake, nothing phony, nothing overly humorous and spit in your face kind of stuff. This is the good stuff, right? That's what we like on this show. That's what you like as a listener, and we are glad you're on board. We have a good show for you today. We have John Cosper on. He's going to talk about Scott Romer's new book. Scott Romer, of course, a friend of the show who's been on a couple times and a noted photographer in the world of professional wrestling and just in the world in general. He's done so much different stuff and taken pictures for so many different things. And, of course, we know him as the former son-in-law of Dick the Bruiser and a former manager as Saul Krichman in Indianapolis. But John's on to talk about Scott's new book, which recently came out, which you can get on Amazon.com. There will be a link in the show notes if you want to directly click that to get that. I highly recommend that book. I have it. Have thumbed through it, have not got to read it yet because I'm still working on the Andre the Giant book. As we all know, I'm a huge book fan, right? I love books in general, but especially wrestling books. So hit me up on social media. Let me know what you are reading and anything you recommend. I may have it already. It may be in my to-read stack. I've got a lot of books. I just picked up the Mad Dogs, Midgets, and Screwjobs book about Montreal history. That's in my list now to read. Of course, I have Scott Romer's book. I have so many other books to read, but I kind of put everything aside to read the Andre book, which I'm working on, and I absolutely love that book. You hear all the recommendations out there about this book, and trust me, they are true. You need to grab that book. And then we also have the Vagabond, Ryan Rogan, on to talk about his career and where he came from. He comes from Montreal. That's where he hails, but he has spent time in Mexico and done many, many other things. An interesting story, interesting career so far, and he's still got a lot ahead of him. But we have him on, and we talk to him later in the show. So let's talk about what's going on in the world of wrestling, right? Things are starting to open up a little bit. Things are starting to be allowed. We're getting in some states where they can have events. Even there's starting to actually be wrestling shows out there being promoted. So wherever you are, get out and support some good professional wrestling in your area. Don't mess with the crap shows. Don't go to those. Don't support those. I mean, you hear people all the time, just support all wrestling. No, don't support all wrestling, right? That's how we get in these jams of having so much shit out there that is horrible and that is embarrassing to us as professional wrestling fans. Don't support all wrestling. Do not support all wrestlers. Support what is good. Support wrestlers that are professionally trained and look good and have pride in their work and do things the right way and have pride in professional wrestling. Support professional wrestling promotions that do the same, that are professionally ran, that do it the right way, not guys that just set up in the parking lot or backyard of anything and just use guys in jeans and t-shirts just so they can roll around with their buddies. Don't do that, right? Support the good groups. Keep them afloat. Keep them in business. Keep them doing what they do. So if you have a quality show in your area, make sure you get out there and check them out. And hit me up on social media. Let me know what you guys are going to see, what you recommend, especially my way. I'm now in North Carolina, eastern North Carolina, and I'm kind of new around here, and I haven't seen a lot of professional wrestling. There wasn't a lot going on, and then, of course, with the COVID and everything and the quarantine and the hit, there's just not been a lot of chance for me to check anything out. So if you're in this area and you know of anything that I need to know, hit me up on social media and let me know that. But besides that, FTR, who we know was one of the favorites of the show, one favorite of mine, made their debut on AEW in an outstanding tag match with the Butcher and the Blade. I thoroughly enjoyed that match. It was absolutely great. I hope that things continue on that path for FTR there in AEW. But again, find me on social media at all my outlets. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, everywhere. And let me know what's going on in your neck of the woods and what you're noticing out there in the world of professional wrestling. Maybe it's something that I will want to talk about and report on here. So do that. I've got a lot of ideas brewing, things I want to do on the show in the future. Anyway, we'll take a break here. And we have a new sponsor on the show, and it's Manscaped. I know you've heard all about Manscaped, but there's a plug coming up for them after we talk about our social media links. So make sure you check them out, right, and use our promo code and help us out there. So let's take a break. And when we come back, we will have that bit with John Cosper. So stick around. Hey, make sure you visit DaveDynasty.com. That is your central hub for everything within the world of the Dave Dynasty Show. From there, you can find links to follow us on all of our social media accounts. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course YouTube, which you will want to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have lots of classic wrestling, every episode of the podcast, and other exclusive features there. While you're at DaveDynasty.com, check out the links to help financially support the show. That is how we keep this free every week. You can go to PROWRESTLINGTEES.com/The Dave Dynasty and buy a shirt to help us out. PayPal.me/The Dave Dynasty to make a one-time financial contribution. Patreon.com/The Dave Dynasty to make ongoing monthly contributions. Or you can click our affiliate links for Amazon.com and HighSpots.com. No additional charge to you, but it helps us out. Thank you for your support, and check out DaveDynasty.com. Complete your experience, The Dave Dynasty Show. All right, guys, now let me tell you about a sponsor of The Dave Dynasty Show, Manscaped. Now, I know you've heard about Manscaped on lots of other podcasts and out in the internet and everything else, but let me tell you from personal experience, you will not be disappointed with the products from Manscaped. Go to manscaped.com and order yourself a Lawnmower 3.0. Now, let me tell you, you hear all the hype about how this can groom yourself and how you can groom all those places on your body that are hard to reach and that really need some attention. And let me tell you, the hype is all true. This thing is amazing. It is beautiful. It'll get all those nooks and crannies and areas that you need to groom. It's easy to use. It's lightweight. It's durable. It's waterproof. Guys, it's going to get the job done. And you need to get a Lawnmower 3.0. And that's not to mention all the other products that are on Manscaped.com. The creams, the colognes, the lotions, the powders, the washes, the deodorants. Guys, they have everything you need for personal hygiene and grooming. You will not be disappointed with the quality, the effectiveness, the ease of use, the great smell, everything with the products that you will get at Manscaped.com. And if you go right now to Manscaped.com and place an order, use the promo code Dynasty20 and you will get 20% off your order. Plus, you'll be helping out the Dave Dynasty Show. But guys, it's above and beyond that. Look, I don't have any sponsors or plug anything on here that I don't personally believe in, right? Everything that we've ever had on the show as far as sponsorship or our promotional material is stuff that I personally would use. This is stuff that I personally will stand behind and endorse, and Manscaped is no different. I've only had it for a couple weeks, and I have used the Lawnmower 3.0 many times. I am so pleased, and you will be too. Again, go to manscaped.com, place your order, use the promo code Dynasty20 to get 20% off.
Welcome back to the Dave Dynasty Show. I am your coach, Isaacs, and today we are joined with the wonderful John Cosper. How are you doing today, John?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Now, we're going to go into stuff for some folks who may not know. John lists wrestling books, including books on Louisville wrestling and bios on Jim Mitchell, Tracy Smothers, and Matt. Your most recent book is with Scott Romer. They noted to write a book with Scott.
Scott approached me last fall at our Alley Club and different shows and everything. I mean, if you've been around Indiana or the Midwest, any independent wrestling show, odds are you've seen Scott taking photos. And same goes for boxing. But we talked every now. Last fall, he kind of stopped and was looking at things. I was there with Hurricane J.T. McGuire and Man Pondo, and he asked to see how I was and if I might be interested in working on a book. And I was actually looking for something to jump into right after finishing up with Tracy Smothers, who I was working with at the time.
So, and I've like you said, if you've been to a wrestling show anywhere in the Midwest, you've probably seen Scott. And a lot of folks, Scott's very interesting, a lot of great stories. I've got to talk to him many times. The great thing about the book is that it takes a unique approach because not only Scott's stories, but also his memories of his friends and his colleagues. Why was the choice made to take that approach?
It was kind of how Scott brought it to me, really. I mean, normally with like with Tracy or with Pondo or Dr. D, it was a lot of one-on-one interviews and stuff. But Scott was all about getting me in touch with people. So rather than doing just straightforward, it really kind of became more of an oral history type thing, which was a lot of fun. It's, something like that is, Scott can sit there and tell you an outrageous story about the time, he put ankle weights on weights to fool the Illinois Boxing Commission. So he'd get in the ring with a guy 40 pounds heavier and get knocked out just so the guy could get a win. But when you hear the story from the promoter's point of view, from the other boxers' point of view, from other people that were there, including Rip Rogers, the guy who had knocked the fighter out in the previous fight, it gives legitimacy to these crazy stories that sometimes these people tell. And it was just kind of, again, a fun thing to have people kind of come in and give their perspective. And like I said, sometimes wrestlers, everybody likes to stretch the truth. And not that Scott's a wrestler, but he is definitely of the wrestling industry, if you know Scott. But no, this was kind of his way of bringing, this actually happened. This is my life. This is my true story. And as crazy as it sounds, it's all true.
No, absolutely. And anybody who's ever talked to Scott, knows that he's got a lot of great stories, and some of those, kind of like you said, you're almost like, okay, you blowing smoke a little bit, but he's a crazy guy. So yeah,
everybody's got their way. With Man Pondo's book, it was always, as soon as you think Pondo is stretching the truth, he pulls his phone out. But here's some photos right here. So and this was Scott's way. I mean, Scott got the photos. I mean, he's got photos with everybody in the world you could, and then some. But it was just kind of fun to. Again, it was just kind of fun to hear perspectives and have other people chip in and tell their versions of different stories.
No, absolutely. And, of course, for people who may not know Scott, Scott had a fascinating career. And, his life has been really crazy as well. I mean, from being a photographer in and out of wrestling, kind of like you mentioned, I feel like a lot of people, like you said, have probably seen his work or seen him do that work. In addition to that, he was a wrestling manager. He was Dick Bruiser's son-in-law. I mean, all this crazy stuff. But what did you find most fascinating when you were doing that research?
I mean, just Scott's passion for everything he does. I mean, he's a guy who, as a teenager, started taking photos at the wrestling, kicked out, the front door and sneak in the back door. It kind of became a little side hustle for him. And really, he turned what a lot of people do as a side hustle even to this day. I mean, he's worked a couple of what you would call, legitimate full-time jobs or whatever. But for the most part, he supported himself as a professional photographer, boxing and wrestling and covering events like the National Italian American, Sports Hall of Fame events and other, major events and everything. I mean, he's photographed, president, leaders, and been in the offices of both the Prime Minister of Israel and also of Yasser Arafat. It's just. He was a guy who, was able to live out his dream by, pursuing his two main passions, which started out as fight sports and photography.
Absolutely. So in addition to the book about Scott, his career and his life and all the things that he's gotten to do, the book is loaded with Scott's photographs, but doesn't even touch the span of his work. Like you said, he's been doing this for God knows how long. So how many photos did you guys look through, and how do you choose what to use?
It was kind of there was a lot of tug of war and everything. We were trying to keep the book from getting to be too huge, but trying to get in a good representation. And look, I mean, Scott's a photographer. I mean, the photography had to be front and center in this book, and we gave it, I think more of the pages in the book are devoted to photos than they are actually to stories. But we had 150 photos in the book. I don't remember the exact number. And there's several pages at the end where we just put together a couple collages, and you've got, you'll see here's President George H.W. Bush, here's Stone Cold Steve, here's Terry Funk, and here's Rip Rogers, and I mean, just faces, you're like, holy crap, is that who I'm really looking at? We just jammed as many of them in there as we could, and kind of shoehorned them in different places. And there's photo spreads from the magazines like Gong Magazine that he used to shoot for, and covers that he had, cover photos that ended up on newsstands across America. Really, it was a challenge to again, like you said, to condense it and to give representation of his days photographing with the Bruiser, We had to give time to, his days at ringside and in the ring as Saul Creechman, the notorious wrestling manager. We had to give time, to his days as a boxing photographer. The pieces where he ended up in the ring, as a boxer himself. And then, the star-studded galas and the major events that he's photographed, where he's rubbed shoulders with, journalists and movie stars and sports legends, baseball and football Hall of Famers and leaders. And so we probably looked at, we certainly looked at well north of, maybe 300, 400 photos, and there was a lot of swapping and shelling out. That was a good part of probably the last 2 weeks of working on the book. It was just a nonstop barrage on my Facebook Messenger of it. Here's another photo. Here's another photo. Oh wait, let's swap this photo out and everything. But it takes a lot of pride in his work, and we tried to give the best kind of a general overview. And like you said, we barely scratched surface, but there's a lot of photos in this book.
No, absolutely. I feel like a lot of folks are going to definitely enjoy that because like you said, that was his pride. That was his art, if you will, and it's great stuff. It really is. So, in addition to all the great things that he did with his work and everything else in the wrestling industry, on a more personal perspective, Scott had a very unique relationship with probably one of the most famous wrestlers of all time, Dick the Bruiser. Mm-hmm. Being his former son-in-law, do you feel that the book gives a different look at Bruiser, maybe kind of a behind the scenes than most people are maybe aware of?
You definitely get to see the family side of Bruiser. Bruiser was very family-oriented. He wanted everybody together at all times. When Scott was married to his daughter, they lived right next door. Bruiser insisted everybody be at all family events, at Little League football games and everything. If you were not there when you were supposed to be there, you paid a price. That's what we talked about in the book. But it does definitely give you the more personal side of Bruiser from a lot of, as Scott meets him when he's a teenager, he's the head of the promotion. He's like, all right, you can take photos head of him. And relationship, and of course, he marries his daughter, and then ultimately going through the divorce with his daughter as well, and how that kind of changes the relationship.
No, absolutely. So now, we've talked a lot about the book. We've talked a lot about the to it, and to get to the finished product. But this is more a question for you. Can you divulge any upcoming? Because we've enjoyed it so far. But can you give us a sneak peek at all about anything that might be coming up?
I've got a couple projects that I'm just on the verge of getting into. One's going to be, and there's another biography and another autobiography coming. The most immediate that's in the works, I've got a first draft right now of it's a story of a lady wrestler named Elvira Snodgrass. It's a name most people don't know. Even if you've seen Lipstick and Dynamite, the documentary about the ladies from the 40s and 50s, you don't know her name because she wasn't brought at all in the documentary. Elvira was originally from Varnado, Louisiana. She was late in the game getting wrestling. She was almost 30 when she began in 1940, and she really became the number 2 woman in pro wrestling during that particular decade. When World War II started and a lot of the guys got conscripted into serving their country in the military, the ladies became center focus. Mildred Burke became the top star. She was the main event everywhere, and Elvira was right up there. She had the same that Mildred did, but she was one of Mildred's top rivals in the ring. She could sell just on her name. There's a lot of times promoters are announce, hey, Elvira Snodgrass and this lady are here next week. Oh, we'll have a couple other guys here wrestling as well. But she's kind of been a forgotten person. She died young. She died in 1956. Her career was cut short by a car accident in 1952, which cost her one of her arms. She ultimately had, and that's kind of one of the stories in the book as to how she lost her arm. The family legend is she had actually had to cut her arm off to get out of the car. Whether that's true or not, I'm still kind of digging into. But I'll tell you, it's a fascinating read. It's Elvira worked heel different places, and I don't want to say she pioneered this stuff, but it's just it's a wonderful, really fun travel log where you're following along, and she's chasing the refs, she's throwing the refs out of the ring, she's biting them, she's ripping their shirt off, she's throwing the girls around, and just just raising a ruckus, the way you're used to hearing the stuff the men do back in the day. And it's kind of a different perspective on the women of that time. And hoping, to, get a lot of other names in there. Some of the ladies that, the ones that are like Young and Gladys Gillum and Mae Weston, but also some of the lesser, Catherine Stewart, Dot Dotson, and, ladies who didn't work necessarily for very long, but, they follow their dream to become pro wrestlers. And it's a story about somebody who dreamed of bettering herself and to, that she left home and left the farm behind, and she traveled the world and became a wrestling superstar.
I mean, that's not looking forward to that one myself. So the next question is how can people follow you and follow your projects? Do you have any social medias to kind of keep up?
Certainly. I'm on Facebook. You can search for Eat Sleep Wrestle. There's an Eat Sleep Wrestle Facebook. You can find my website, sleepwrestle.com. That's where you can not only, I've got a blog and got links to all the books, but you can actually purchase signed copies of the book, autographed copies of Dr. D. David Schultz, Men Pondo, Hurricane J.J. McGuire, Tracy and Scott Rome are all available up there right now. I'm also on Instagram as I think Cosper, and I'm on Twitter as John Cosper. So you can call me any one of those places.
Are you looking for the newest and hottest in the world of pro wrestling? Then check out the amazing action on PowerSlam.tv, the biggest indie pro wrestling channel in the world. Get over 6,000 hours of the best events from over 150 of your favorite promotions from 20 different countries around the globe. Brands like Progress Wrestling, Evolve Wrestling, Combat Zone, Defy, PCW Ultra, PWX, Over the Top, Shine, and hundreds of others with fresh content added every day for only $5.99 per month. Get your free trial today at powerslam.tv.
Just use promo code DYNASTY.
Back to the Dave Dynasty Show. I am your Kike Isaacs, and today I am joined by the Vagabond, Ryan Rogan. How you doing today, sir?
What's going on, Ike?
Hey, been an American dream, man. Or I guess I'm trying.
I'm living in dream.
I was living the Canadian dream. well, great to have you on the show, Ryan. And we're
thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely, it's a pleasure, man. Well, we're just gonna go ahead and jump right into it. So you already said it. You're from the great country of Canada, and if I remember correctly, it's Montreal, Quebec, right?
Yes, it's Montreal, Quebec.
Awesome. Which, of course, for most wrestling fans, Canada has a fantastic history with professional wrestling. A lot of amazing, incredible athletes have come from that area. So did you see any wrestling growing up in Canada, and did wrestling impact you at all?
Oh, yeah, definitely it did impact me. My first event that I attended live was at the Molson Center on February 2nd, 1997. And the main event was Shawn Michaels, Psycho Sid, and Bret Hart. And I remember just being so attached to that show and attached to all the wrestlers. It was my first live event. Everything was just so captivating. There was so many people. I think I was 6 years old in '97, and it was so spectacular. It was just so grand and so flamboyant that it really caught my attention right away.
No, absolutely. And so, having been a fan that early on in life, and that's a pretty fantastic show. It sounds like, and
oh yeah, it was. I think there was another match. It was Taker versus no, I forget. No, don't ask me. I forgot. So
no,
I still have the card though. Like I still have the they give you like the show card there at the shows.
Right.
I don't know, kind of like a flat of that, but that's picked up, so.
So I won't agree with that, but I'll take your word on it.
I'll get her and I'll prove myself.
So, with being a fan of wrestling, did it ever occur to you when you were like a kid, like, hey, I want to be a wrestler, or when did that kind of become an idea?
Well, okay, it goes a little far. It goes as far as what my family tells me. When I was a kid, when I was a baby, and I was crying, the only thing that would stop me from crying was sound playing on TV. And then as I got older, I was maybe 3 when I started to I have memory. I remember Survivor Series 1993, and I had that tape. And I continuously watched that tape. I think I did at least minimum 2 times a day until I wrote the tape,
Right.
And this show in '97, that's when I really, and I said, like, I remember saying this to when I was a kid, I wanted to be a wrestler. This is what I wanted to do. So it's really in my blood, like since I was a kid, so.
Absolutely, and and you definitely you took the next step. I mean, a lot of people who when they're younger, very few of us take that step and they jump in the ring.
Well, that's the thing. It's when you're in that situation, it's stepping out of your comfort zone, and experiencing something new. It's like people have the idea, oh, this could be a really cool thing. I want to try this, but to actually do it takes a lot of
Right. No, absolutely, and it really does to be able to, like you said, step out of your comfort zone and put yourself in that kind of a scenario. It's for sure a huge, I would say for a lot of folks, a culture shock. They're like, oh, I didn't know this was that hard. And
that's what happened to me. Like I'm not going to lie to you. When I started, I was 14 when I started wrestling. So when I showed up to wrestling school and I saw that how it was, I wasn't scared, but I was like, okay, well, this was a shock to me. I'm like, okay, because to some extent, I still, I was 14, to some extent, I still thought wrestling was real in a way. I was kind of a gullible wrestling fan, So, like, to a certain degree, I still thought it was real, but when I got into that world and I saw how it really was, I was like, oh, okay, wait a second, now this is really eye-opening, and it kind of helped me grow up faster, No,
and, and that's kind of one of those things that kind of takes what's the old saying they say, it kind of takes the wind from your sail a little bit. You're like, oh, wow, this is not what I expected, but...
Exactly. Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah.
And then to kind of go back a little bit, so obviously you took the next step. Instead of just staying a fan, you became a part of the sport. You became a part of the world, the craziest world of wrestling. And so I'm going to probably butcher this gentleman's name, but you were trained partly by Jacques Rougeau. Is that right?
It's perfect. It's the perfect pronunciation. Yes, I was trained. Yeah, no, it was good. Jacques Rougeau. That's how we say it here, and that's how English people say it. The Mountie Jacques Rougeau is the one who trained me, and his right-hand man, Eric Mastrocola. And, well, Jacques trained me, and Eric, he kind of molded me, He took the time to really come to classes and even come earlier and stay later with me and kind of help me out and really teach me the right way in one-on-one sessions, And Jacques was more like the more of the group, where he's the teacher in front of everyone. Okay, you guys, this is how you guys do things. He actually legit taught me how to up, which is really cool. And a few things, I learned quite a lot the stuff from Jacques. I've had bad experiences with, I'm not going to say that he was an angel, definitely a good man somewhere there, and learned a lot from him, So I can never take away my training that I got from him. Like, I owe him for that.
No, yeah, absolutely. And, not, I guess not everybody has the experience with folks, and I'm sure.
Well, exactly. And, I'm not here and start bashing him. I've had my fair share of problems with him, just like anyone else in the world has. I'm not in any position in my life to judge anyone by what they do, So I just leave it go, and the past is past, and you move forward, So.
No, absolutely. I agree, 100%. So then to kind of follow up on that, obviously, you had that training, you had those experiences, and eventually I feel like one of the huge benchmarks of a professional wrestler is your first actual match. So
yes.
You were very young, you had your first match. What was that like?
Oh, man. From the get-go, I'm a person who has a lot of nerves. So imagine having your first match at 15 years old in front of 2,800 people. That was like, I'll never forget that experience, until the day I die, man. It was the most nerve-wracking moment in my life at that point. I never felt so many nerves and so much anxiety and so much everything at the same time, but it was so good. And when I finally went through the curtain, I was called El Loco Torino, and I was, the name doesn't make sense at all, but it's just El Loco Torino, and just a guy, just a crazy luchador, a white boy under a luchador mask. It was pretty random, but it kind of worked, So yeah, man, it was insane. Yeah.
That's I feel like it's a pretty common occurrence, especially for a lot of younger wrestlers, is that their first match is typically under a mask.
Yeah, no, it was funny because Jacques was like, yeah, we gotta put a fucking mask on you because you have such an ugly face. He was that kind of guy sometimes, but I think that kind of built me up later on to kind of take stuff from people, because in the business you grow up and there's a lot of bullies, So, but he kind of toughened me up at a young age a little bit. So that I do appreciate. At the time, I might have not have appreciated it, but now I do. So.
I was like, what is it they say about hindsight? It's 2020, right?
Right.
But, so obviously, you've had a lot of different experiences, and especially getting into wrestling, and getting through that training, and getting through that nerve-wracking first match. Obviously, has done a lot, and you've done a lot of great stuff. But I've seen that you are a part of several winter death tours in northern Canada. What are those? What is a winter death tour?
A winter death tour. Man, a winter death tour is basically you're putting your life on the line to go entertain the fans of the native reserves of Canada. That's in a short. Basically, you leave. I'll give you kind of like a route. Like you leave from Toronto, you go to Dryden, let's say Canada. Dryden is is a part of Ontario, but Ontario is such a large province that to actually get from the beginning of Ontario to the end of Ontario, it takes about 26 hours. So it's a really long drive. And so you drive all the way up to Dryden, and then you go up north, and then you have to pass, I don't know if you have Ice Road Truckers. Oh, yeah. Have you seen that show?
You think that's like those folks with like the totes, right? And like,
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And that's what we do. We go to the ice roads, and then we go to the community, and then we go to the schools, and we perform shows for the community, and then we also do like anti-bullying seminars and whatever the community is going to that point, like just to be like a positive role for the community,
I got you. So that's pretty wild. So I'm imagining that those trips were very long and somewhat dangerous.
Oh, yes, very treacherous. Actually, the last one I was on, we were stuck in the ditch in the middle of nowhere for 16 hours because the roads are so bad, and one person says the road is open for people to drive, and then you find out that it's actually not drivable, and we got stuck for 16 hours. So there's a lot of negative stuff to it, but then in the positive, if you're a worker starting out in the business and you get a chance to be on these winter death tours, my first one was in 2010, and at the time was Ernie Todd who owned it. He was the former NWA president. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. And he used to run CWF. And I had my first death tour in 2010, and then I went back 3 times, and then I went back in 2018, and yeah, it's really something to really be built for that. Like, you got to really want it. For green guys starting out in the business, like, if you can get on these winter death tours, I really recommend it. At one point, I was wrestling 3 times a night. So, like, you get a lot of reps in, you get a lot of matches, you get a lot of time, a lot of experience. That's where I got all my experience, to be honest with you, you're away home for 2 months. And you do, like, let's say, I think that the first time I went in 2010, I did 54 matches in 2 months, Now, that's a lot of experience, and some people don't even wrestle 54 matches in a year. Some just wrestle 12 or 24 or something like that, but 54 in 2 months, like, you can't go wrong with that,
I mean, that's damn near a match a day.
Well, it is, and like, and then I remember one tour we did, the second to last tour I did, we wrestled, we set up the ring in the morning, we wrestled at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then we took down the ring, and then we had a show at 2 o'clock at another school, so we had to set up, do the show, take down, and then we had another show at 7 o'clock. So set up again, wrestle, and then another match, and then take down. So, like, you're really working. You're really working for your money, and you're really hustling. So
that definitely sounds like the most work that a person could put into wrestling. I mean, that's intense, man. But
yeah, man. like I said, it's not for everyone, and there's a lot of people who, you know, like I'm going to be honest with you, I've heard a lot of stories, and I think I was even part of a tour where in the, yeah, actually there was one tour. It was only 2 weeks, and the guy left, like, because he couldn't take it. I guess he missed home too much because of how everything was, I guess. I don't know, it's just, like I said, not everyone's made for this, so.
Well, I mean, it sounds like a very incredible experience, but like you said, I guess it's not for everybody, but I mean,
Exactly, yeah.
That's a hell of an opportunity to pass up, I feel like.
It is, and like I said, you gotta want it, man. If you don't want it, just stay home.
That's right. So I guess kind of also, you know, follow up on another part of our conversation. You know, we talk a lot about a couple different things, but another thing that I've kind of heard was that you were trained briefly by a friend of the Dave Dynasty Show, Rip Rogers.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, and I've heard from my research here that that's kind of where the name the Vagabond. So that's kind of where that character development happened was with Rip. Tell us a little bit about
Rip. It was about how the whole station of my life came upon at that moment. So, I'm going to backtrack to 2014. I remember it was December 2014, and I was listening to the Carolina podcast with Rip Rogers. And I listened to that podcast, and by the end of that podcast, I was saying to myself, I needed to get the fuck out of Montreal. Sign language.
That's perfectly fine.
You know, and I needed to get out, I needed to do something, and this was the guy that I think that can help me. In my heart, I believed it at that moment that the guy that can kind of maybe give me that boost that I need, you know, something that I'm missing. Because I know in my heart that I can make it, but I just need that extra boost. I needed that because I need more knowledge, you know. And I knew that man has a shit ton of knowledge, and I couldn't pass up the opportunity to say to myself that I've actually trained with him. So what I did was in January of it was 2015, I decided to sell everything that I had. Really, I grabbed up as much money as I could, and I paid for my bus ride to go from Montreal to Kentucky to Louisville. So basically, I had all my belongings with me. I had nothing but my bags. I had my pillow with me, and I had maybe a couple of $100. Not even at that, to be. I think I had only like $150. But I was able to get to Louisville, and then I got to Louisville, and I had to wait a while because I didn't have cash to kind of get a room, or I didn't know anyone in Louisville. You know, I didn't reach out to anyone before. I just kind of took an impulsive decision of getting up and leaving. And I remember like halfway through, I was in Detroit, and that's when I started reaching out. I kind of said to myself in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh shit, well, I guess it's time to find a place to stay, right? So so I started to reach out to some people that were already trying VW, and then I ended up crashing at Stefan Smith's house, the one that just got signed by WWE, the referee. Rum Thump, Stefan Smith. I ended up staying with him for a while, so he was really generous to help me out and really like give me cheap rent, and I'm forever grateful to him. I'm in debt to him, definitely. And I got there to Louisville, and I trained with Rip, and I got there, and he really put good training into me in the first day. Like, he made me puke. That's how much he pushed me. You know, that's exactly what I needed. You know.
No, absolutely. And you know, I've talked to Rip a couple times for the show, and that's always kind of what he would say. He's like, you kind of have to put them through the ringer. He's like, because you want to make sure that they want to be there. And
yes,
everybody who I've ever talked to who's ever trained or even worked with Rip has said the same, that he'll put you through hell, but at the end of the day, it's worth it.
The best quote and the words I lived by ever since that day, he told me that if you want to be successful, you got to reach the depths of hell to be successful. Basically, you know, like you really gotta sink through the depths of hell to rise to the top. And like I never ever forgot those words. And they were really stuck in my mind, and I still think about it to this day, to be honest. So. Right.
And speaking of, you know, falling to the depths of hell and then rising to be successful. Yes. Of your wrestling career, another thing that I kind of found interesting that you've worked and you've had a tryout with Impact Wrestling. Is that right?
Yes, actually, well, the WWE extra work, yes, that, and the tryout with Impact was, it was like kind of like a seminar, but also a tryout at the same time in Canada, Ontario, and it was for, there was that, I forget what it was that show there that we're doing for, I think it was like Global Forge or something, and they had some testings on, so they were picking some guys for that, so I ended up going to that and shot for that, and got to talk with Scott Demore and kind of show my face, but, so.
Get a little FaceTime, see what you can do there.
Exactly, Mara Fuji was there, Scott Demore, John Vine, so I did best I could, and obviously I didn't get selected, but it's okay, as long as they knew him, and I just keep trying to do, I keep trying to do better and better each time, I'm in the ring, so I don't know how they take notice of that, and then, maybe something come upon that.
Absolutely, and that's what I was gonna say. I mean, always getting your face out there, and kind of, I mean, just from like the conversation we've had so far, I mean, it's very clear that you're pretty well traveled. I mean, for God's sake, you moved from Canada to Kentucky of all places, and and then in addition to that, another thing that I found interesting, while me and Dave were kind of talking, is that eventually you moved to Mexico and you lived there for like a year. What was that like? What was it like living there, and kind of, what do you think? What are your thoughts of the difference with like Libre and all of that?
Okay. Well, look, I'm just going to rewind a second because you asked me a question, and I'm going to answer that question, and I'll go back to that about how my character came upon. Right. So after that trip, I was talking with a friend, and he said the word vagabond, and I had just got back from that trip in Louisville, and I was homeless. I had nothing. I had no place to stay when I got back to Canada. I was basically in the streets. And then one day he popped that word vagabond. So I just connected that word vagabond with all the experience I went through in Kentucky, and that's how my character came upon. And by that's how I got noticed, and that's how I was able to go to Mexico. In Mexico, I spent 11 months there. I was offered a spot by a man that I met here in Montreal, actually a show in Saint Remy, Quebec. And I was finishing my match, and he was walking outside, and he came up to me, he's like, "Hey, can I speak to the promoter, because I need to rent a ring." And I had put two and two together at that very moment. I knew he was from Mexico. I knew he was a wrestler, because he kind of looked like a wrestler. So I'm like, "Hey, I know a person who has the ring." So I put him in contact with the person who I knew who had the ring, and then next thing you know, they're inviting me to Mexico. So I was like, whoa, okay, cool. So they gave me a place to stay. He gave me a SIM card for my phone. He subbed me every day for a month and a half. He got me a bunch of bookings. It was so great. Honestly, I could not be any more lucky for what I had, being at the right place at the right time. It was great. It was great. And the style of Lucha Libre is completely different from our traditional wrestling. Working from the right side, lots of dives, fast-paced wrestling, And it definitely for the first few matches kind of got me off guard, but I adapted pretty fast, and it was fun. And I got to train a little bit at the dojo, and I got to travel. I got to go to Monterey. I got to go to Veracruz. I went to a bunch of places. I'm really, really thankful for that. So.
No, absolutely, and obviously, being in Mexico, Mexico also has a very deep history with wrestling and lucha libre. To kind of follow up on that, there's some different factors with wrestling that's a little bit different with lucha, compared to consider like our version of wrestling.
Right.
Being from Canada, having visited the United States, and then going down there for that period of time, what would be the biggest culture shock living in Mexico?
The biggest culture shock living in Mexico was, I don't know, man. It was just the atmosphere and the vibe, everyone's so calm over there. Everyone's so calm. It's not what people think it is. It's really calm. People are very greeting. Their food is amazing. It's completely different. Everything's just different. just even the way you look at the street or look at the signs is just everything so like, you know, it's really a culture shock, man. Like, and then like I was living too, like it was kind of like it's kind of like an apartment complex, but like with these gates and stuff, and like they have like a giant gate in the front, so you have your key, you go in there, and then after there's a bunch of room there. So like for me that was different because before living in Mexico, I was living in a rooming board. And that room and board was like in a kind of like a duplex of a house. So that's not the same as what they have in Mexico, you know. And then also they don't use electricity for cooking; they use gas, you know. So like I would have to get gas to make my food, you know. So there's a lot of things like that, little small thing, culture shock, you know.
No, yeah, you know, I've spent some time in Mexico too, and that's what I was gonna say. There's a lot of like little small things, like the things that you wouldn't expect to be super different. Is the things that you have to get used to the most, and that's what I say. Gas cooking.
It goes to the point, even to like the switch of the light. You know, it's not the same.
Oh, yeah, I say the switch of the light. I know some places I've gone, even like the standard plugins, like your outlets are sometimes different, depending.
Right, exactly.
And it's crazy. You never think like, oh, that's what's going to be different. You know, you think of all the things that you think about Mexico, but you don't really know like all the small little antiquated things that are really different.
Right, and that's like back to what I was saying earlier. Like people are so quick to judge, you know. So like you haven't actually seen it.
It's a good country. I gotta say, I love living there, and obviously you love visiting there. So it's like you said, people are so quick to judge. If you just give it a chance, I feel like a lot of people would like it.
And the best part about leaving Mexico is I got to find my soulmate. You know, I got to find my wife, and she's here with me right in Canada. So it was definitely worth for me.
I was gonna say, I bet that was a nice little addition to the wrestling was finding.
Oh man, like you know, you don't. It's gonna sound super cheesy, but you know, a lot of people live their lives and they don't find their soulmates. But I'm glad that I found mine, and it was through wrestling. So I can't be any happier, and I can't complain about land. Like, I have everything I need.
That's what matters, man. You know, having a passion and having something to care about. That's really all it means. But
right.
So kind of going in a different direction. You know, we've talked a lot about your early career. We talked a lot about the stuff that you've done up to this point. You know, going to Canada, training with Rip. Going to Mexico, which is obviously a great conversation, but also more about somebody you knew. So you knew Frenchie Martin, who most people remember as Dino Bravo's manager at WWE, but he was a legend in Montreal. What was it like knowing him?
Oh, probably maybe like 6 times. But we hit it off so well the first time we met. You know, it was just him talking about random stuff, you know, because he had such a raspy voice, because he used to smoke so much, you know. He had a really raspy smoker voice, I remember that, and he was just so friendly and so such a people person. Like, for me, this is how I see him, because I'm not going to say I knew him or to the point I called him and everything, but every time I would see him, like, we would hang out, you know, we would actually talk, and, we would just shoot the shit, basically, and he would talk a lot about like his days in the WWF, you know, and how it was, and how wrestling has changed, you know, how it's not the same, you know, and a really old school kind of guy, you know, and I have nothing bad to say about Frenchie Martin, and I don't think anyone else does, you know, so.
No, absolutely. I mean, I've basically seen him and, some big things with the WWE and whatnot, and, and I've always heard good stories about him. Obviously, I've never met him myself, but I've always heard great stuff about him. So it's always good to hear more great stuff about him.
Right.
So, so I guess kind of back to, all the vast experiences that you've had in wrestling so far. You had I would say, a pretty interesting career, and, you still have a lot of you. So far in wrestling, what would you say is probably one of your favorite or one of your best highlights of your career so far?
It would definitely be my work I did with Jerry Lynn in Tennessee. I got to work with Jerry Lynn briefly. I got to work with him, and we had a good thing going. a really, really good thing going. You can check, I think there's a few stuff on YouTube at the moment. We had a thing going where he was going to do, like, I think it was kind of the same concept that Lynn and Styles did in TNA. I don't know if you would call that storyline.
I think I do. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, where, like, I think, well, this is what someone told me. I haven't actually seen it, but someone told me this, and I guess that's how the storyline was about to go, but it didn't work out. Was he was going to be kind of like a protege? I was going to be like his protege, and I was going to be like his student, kind of, and he was going to teach me. But like I was arrogant and I had a hard head, so like I was still being the heel, you know. And while he was obviously the mega babyface, you know. And it came to the point where we were supposed to maybe have a match together, but then it was called off because he had a retirement show in Tennessee, and he thought it would be disrespectful to kind of maybe get up in the ring one more time. So I respect that, you know. But as long as I got to work with him, it was really cool. You know, I got to learn a lot from him. I did his seminar, and you know, we hit it off pretty good. You know, like I don't keep in touch with him all the time, but when I think about it, sometimes I'll say hi to him and, you know, and try to have a conversation with him, you know. And it was a cool moment, you know, like to say that I kicked Jerry Lynn's balls, you know, was, I guess that's my career highlight.
Right. I feel like there's a handful of people that can say that, so.
Well, it's cool, because his last match was what, like 5, 6, 7 years ago or something like that, you know, and to say that, you know, he hasn't been in the ring with anyone, and I got to work with him, and he trusted me to work with him because he had surgery. And, you know, he was so professional and so knowing, and he made me feel professional. He made me feel like one of the boys. He made me feel belong in the business, you know, and I really appreciate that on his part, because I was kind of an obnoxious little shit sometimes, you know, so after a certain age, I kind of realized that, like, hey, like, I need to, you know, to stop my bullshit, cut the bullshit, you know, and, you know, just like, you know, being surrounded by guys like Jerry Lynn who have so much experience, and so, you know, I'm not going to be a dick about that. I'm going to take that, you know, I'm going to use that to my better my craft. I'm going to do.
Absolutely.
That's the way I look at it.
No, absolutely, and I feel like a really good way to put it too. You know, you gotta, in a way, kind of have to grow up a little bit with wrestling. You gotta mature a little bit and kind of, you know, like you said, use all your tools to your advantage and learn how to do that. So,
Exactly.
But that being said, you know, you still have a lot of time in front of you in the professional wrestling industry. So, and you've already done so much, as we've talked about. You've had a lot of great highlights. But what's next? What is next for Ryan Rogan? Like, what can we expect out of you in the future? Do you have goals with wrestling that you want to share with us?
What's next for Ryan Rogan? So, you know, it's really hard to say right now at the moment because of the pandemic.
Right.
You know, but you know, I'm definitely looking at AEW. You know, I'm looking at their product. I'm watching their product. I'm studying their product, and I feel that. I feel I can belong there. I feel like I can hang with the guys. I feel I can pull out some really good matches, some of them, you know, and I think if I were able to get a chance to wrestle AEW, I think honestly, with good preparation, I knock it out of the park, and hopefully I can get time. So that's really where I'm looking at right now, definitely.
No, absolutely. So then I guess kind of and this is again kind of on a different, you know, track, because we've talked a lot about wrestling. So, you know, a lot of people have probably wrestled. A lot of them know who you are as a wrestler. Tell us a little bit about Ryan Rogan out of the ring. What's something a lot of people maybe don't know about you? Maybe like a hobby that you have.
Ryan Rogan outside the ring is a gentle person, patient. I'm hardworking. If I really want something, I'm going to go after it. You know, that can be anything in life. It's wrestling or non-wrestling. I'm the kind of person that doesn't like to take bullshit from anyone anymore. If you something, I'm going to call you out on your bullshit right away, man. Like, I'm tired of that stuff. You know, so... But I respect you, you know, it doesn't matter what color you are, what you are, I love everyone equally, and all I want is for everyone to be equal and to be, just to live their life and be them and be themselves and no stress. That's what I want, and that's who I am. So.
No, absolutely, and that's the way to live. That is truly the way to live. Not to say, I don't know the best way to say it is, but basically just you can't care that much, and you can't take yourself too seriously. That's what I would say.
Well, yeah, that's the problem, and a lot of guys have that problem. And look, I was there too. Like I used to take myself way too seriously, but you just got to find a balance. You just got to be like, hey, okay, like take yourself seriously, but also like just don't go overboard. And just focus. That's one problem of mine that I had over the few years is focusing on what I want. But once I grasp it, then like I'm unstoppable. I can go all the way. So.
No, absolutely. So I guess there's one kind of a last question here for us to kind of wind us down. Obviously, in the wonderful 21st century, we have all kinds of wonderful things, all kinds of wonderful social medias, and a lot of different ways fans can follow you in your career. So, what are some ways that fans can keep up with you on stuff?
Well, first things first, most important is Twitter. So you can follow me on Twitter at Ryan Rogan. And I have an Instagram is Ryan Rogan 165. Like my page on Facebook. And subscribe on my channel, which is I believe is Ryan Rogan as well. And I'm going to be posting a lot of old footage from my past that I started already. So I'm going to be doing a lot of interesting things in the future with social media, so make sure you follow me.
If you are looking for the best books, DVDs, and posters on classic wrestling nostalgia, then you want to visit crowbarpress.com. There are literally dozens of titles there, including biographies of the likes of Bruiser Brody, Ole Anderson, Ivan Koloff, and of course, Dick the Bruiser, as we've spoke about here on the Dave Dynasty Show. You want to visit crowbarpress.com for all of your classic wrestling nostalgia needs. Again, that is crowbarpress.com. All right, and welcome back to the Dave Dynasty Show. I am Dave Dynasty. Thank you for joining us this week for another episode of our show that we bring to you free every week, and we can do that continually if you continue to support our sponsors. So check out manscape.com, all the information we had earlier in the episode. All you have to do is go to manscape.com, place an order, use the code Dynasty20, and it helps us out. So please do that. And go check out some of the other sponsors and things that we mentioned here on the show. And you can also visit us on Pro Wrestling Tees, order one of our shirts. That is probably the best way to directly support us. Thank you to Ryan Rogan for the interview today and John Cosper, both of those great segments on the episode today. Good to hear from both of them. And as the world opens up out there, just be safe, be careful. Remember, just because things are starting to open up does not mean the threat is gone. The virus is still there. It's still a risk. So be safe, practice social distancing, wear a mask, be nice to other people, be conscious to other people in their situations. And there's a lot going on in this world, and just love one another. All right, that's what we have to do. Right? Quit being hateful. Quit being filled with rage and hate and all this and that. Just love one another and stop. Just stop being so narrow-minded, people. Really, it's just not a good look. And it's a horrible, horrible thing. And if you're in the midst of all this, and if you're in a situation where all this is directly affecting you in a way that I cannot, that I just can't imagine, that I can't put myself in, then all my love, all my vibes are good vibes are going out to you. But anyway, as things, like I said, as things open up, just be careful and continue to practice and be smart. So until next time, I am Dave Dynasty. This is the Dave Dynasty Show. And wherever you go and whatever you do, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.